Imagine this. You wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, heart racing. You feel a deep emptiness in your chest. A void that has become too familiar. It's the same sensation that has been following you, day in and day out. The unshakable feeling that no matter how much you achieve, how much you try to change, the weight of life's suffering always looms over you. You lie there, staring at the ceiling, pondering one simple question: why does life hurt so much? Why does it feel as though the very act of living is a battle against an invisible, relentless force that we can never seem to defeat? You've tried to escape it, through relationships, career success, material wealth. But nothing seems to fill the hole, nothing seems to quiet the endless echo of discontentment that reverberates through your thoughts. In your search for meaning, you've read countless books, listened to endless philosophies, but each answer only seems to offer a temporary distraction. As soon as you find peace in one place, another wave of suffering inevitably crashes in. Why is it like this? Why can't we ever seem to outrun the pain? Now picture this. What if the very thing you've been avoiding, the pain, the suffering, is not the enemy at all? What if it's the key to ending it all? It sounds insane, doesn't it? How could suffering be the key to liberation? It feels counterintuitive, like suggesting we should dive deeper into the darkness to find the light. But what if that's exactly what philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer was trying to tell us? He once said that life is a constant pain, a perpetual state of striving, always seeking more, but never truly reaching fulfillment. What if Schopenhauer's deep and often bleak philosophy holds the secret to ending this cycle of suffering? What if the very truth that no one wants to face is the one that will finally set us free? In a world where happiness is promised in every new gadget, relationship, and job promotion, Schopenhauer offered something radically different, a solution that might make you rethink everything you've been taught about the meaning of life. But before we get to that, let's dive deeper into the very nature of suffering itself. Why does it seem to follow us, no matter how much we try to escape? The question we must ask ourselves is, can we ever be truly free of suffering, or are we forever bound by its invisible chains? But here's the paradox. What if the chains we think are holding us captive are the very things that, when understood, can set us free? Before we get lost in the web of confusion, let's take a step back and explore the deeper roots of why this suffering exists in the first place. We'll answer the question of why it haunts us all, and more importantly, how we can find the key to unlocking ourselves from its grip. If you want to truly understand how to break free, stay with us. This is a journey you'll never look at life the same way again. Before we continue, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe. We're diving deep into the most profound insights on life's meaning, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Now that you've been jolted awake by the thought of suffering as both our torment and our potential key to liberation, let's uncover the psychological and philosophical roots of this paradox. Why does suffering haunt us so relentlessly? Why does it feel like an inescapable part of the human condition? To understand this, we need to look into the depths of human psychology, philosophy, and more importantly, the human drive to constantly strive. At the core of Schopenhauer's philosophy lies a disturbing insight. Our very will to live is the cause of our suffering. This concept goes against everything we've been conditioned to believe. From the moment we're born, society teaches us that life is about becoming, about achieving, about attaining the next thing that will finally make us happy. We chase after goals, desires, dreams, hoping they will fill us. But this endless striving comes at a cost: psychological pain. The central premise of Schopenhauer's philosophy is that the will, or our innate drive, is an ever-hungry force that demands more and more from us. It's like a beast that can never be satisfied. This drive compels us to want, need, and desire constantly. It pushes us to chase after pleasure, wealth, status, and success, believing that attaining these will bring us peace. Yet this same will traps us in a cycle of unfulfilled longing. When we desire something, we feel a sense of discomfort until it's attained. But once we achieve it, the satisfaction is fleeting. The will forces us into another cycle of longing, and once more, we begin to suffer. Schopenhauer put it bluntly: human life must be some kind of mistake. This is not a life of peace and fulfillment, but of endless cyclical suffering. It's not just a simple matter of wanting things. We're conditioned to believe that life's meaning is bound up in this pursuit. Yet, once the object of desire is attained, we soon find it empty, like drinking salt water in the desert. This creates an internal tension between the reality of our dissatisfaction and the external promises of happiness. But the problem doesn't end with Schopenhauer's theory of the will. It goes much deeper. To understand this, let's turn to the work of Carl Jung, who expanded on Schopenhauer's ideas and took them into the realm of the unconscious mind. Jung recognized that our desires were not just superficial wants, they were symbolic of something much deeper. The unconscious, he said, was filled with suppressed fears, desires, and anxieties. When we refuse to face the darker aspects of ourselves, our shadow, these unaddressed psychological forces begin to leak into our conscious lives, manifesting as suffering. We project our inner struggles onto the world, seeing others as obstacles, judging ourselves harshly, and constantly feeling the void between what we want and what we have. This brings us to a central concept in psychology, the hedonic treadmill. The term describes our tendency to return to a baseline level of happiness after positive or negative events. No matter how much we accumulate, we always return to our default state of dissatisfaction. Our brains are wired to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and stabilize at an equilibrium. But this equilibrium is almost always a form of quiet, perpetual dissatisfaction. This explains why the excitement of new achievements quickly fades, leaving us longing for the next fix. It's as if life is rigged from the start. What Schopenhauer and Jung are telling us is that the very architecture of the human mind is designed to perpetuate suffering. The more we try to outrun this truth, the more deeply we entrench ourselves in the cycle. Whether it's the unconscious forces in our psyche, the biological wiring of our desires, or the societal pressure to achieve, there seems to be an invisible force guiding us into this trap. The worst part, we don't even realize we're trapped. And then we encounter a shocking twist. We are the ones perpetuating our own suffering. Our own minds, our own expectations, our desires for fulfillment are the true architects of our pain. But it's even deeper than that. As much as we might long for something outside ourselves to solve this problem, wealth, success, love, material possessions, none of these can deliver the lasting peace we crave. Even existential thinkers, like Friedrich Nietzsche, recognized this truth. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. In other words, once we face the inherent suffering in life, we must also find a purpose that transcends the desire for fleeting happiness. But how does one find this purpose in the middle of an ever-present sea of desires? Now, let's return to Schopenhauer's solution, which appears at first glance to be as bleak as the problem itself. He didn't advocate for mindless pursuit or resignation to suffering. Instead, he pointed to something profound: detachment. Schopenhauer suggested that the only way to escape suffering is to disengage from the endless desires of the will. He called it the denial of the will to live, a radical rejection of the constant striving that fuels suffering. The moment we detach from the need to constantly seek more, we open up the possibility of true peace. But this solution, while profound, raises new questions. How do we detach without falling into despair? How do we live without constantly reaching for something new? The deeper we dive into this paradox, the more we are confronted with the question, what does it mean to truly live, free from the constant grip of suffering? Before we move forward, take a moment to reflect on this deeper truth. The very pursuit of happiness, the desire for more, is what keeps us from achieving it. This leads us to our next step, the unseen consequences of this hidden force that we have yet to uncover. Imagine walking through a dense fog, each step uncertain, each direction indistinguishable from the last. You're surrounded by shadows that whisper to you, urging you to keep moving, to keep pushing forward, to reach for the light you believe is ahead. But as you keep walking, you begin to realize something unsettling. The fog is not just around you, it is inside you. The tension you feel, the pressure to achieve, to become, to win, isn't just a product of external circumstances, it's woven into the very fabric of your existence. What if, instead of being a random collection of thoughts, emotions, and experiences, all of this striving is part of an invisible structure that is quietly, unnoticeably shaping your life? This is where Schopenhauer's theory intersects with something far more insidious: the unseen consequences of living a life driven by perpetual desire. It's not just that you want more, it's that the pursuit of more defines everything about you, your sense of identity, and your purpose in the world. On the surface, striving for success, wealth, love, and status seems harmless. Society has normalized this cycle, encouraging you to climb higher, do more, be more. But the consequences of living in this constant pursuit of an elusive more extend far beyond mere dissatisfaction. In fact, they begin to infiltrate your entire perception of reality. To understand this, let's take a look at the mind, how it works, and how it is subtly wired against us. The neurological processes that drive human behavior are not simply rooted in the desire to satisfy basic needs. As Schopenhauer said, the human will is the force that constantly urges us forward, creating the endless cycle of longing and pain. The desire for more creates a hunger that can never truly be satisfied. When one goal is achieved, it is only to make way for the next, like climbing an endless staircase. But the deeper truth is this: as you climb, you never actually arrive. This effect has a profound psychological impact. The more you chase something, whether it's money, success, or recognition, the more you distance yourself from the present moment. Each step forward takes you further from yourself, from your true desires, and deeper into the grip of society's expectations and the collective desire to be more. This trap is insidious because it's so difficult to perceive. You may feel the pressure mounting, but the solution seems just within reach. The next promotion, the new relationship, the new possession. You believe that each new attainment will be the one that finally brings you peace. But after you achieve it, you realize that peace is always temporary, always fleeting. And this is where the unseen consequences come into play. Your happiness becomes conditional, dependent entirely on external factors. Instead of finding contentment in the simple act of being alive, you find yourself always wanting, always reaching for the next thing, but never quite grasping it. This state of perpetual wanting disconnects you from the present. Your mind is caught in a continuous loop of desire, each one leading to another, creating a sense of emptiness that only deepens with time. Furthermore, there are neurological consequences that stem from this constant striving. Studies in neuroscience have shown that the brain's reward system becomes overstimulated by constant achievement. Every new accomplishment gives you a brief burst of dopamine, a neurochemical that rewards you for reaching your goal. But over time, the brain adapts to these bursts of dopamine, requiring more and more to generate the same level of satisfaction. This process is called hedonic adaptation, and it's why you can never truly be content with what you achieve. You're constantly chasing that next high, but it always eludes you. What's even more troubling is that this cycle doesn't just affect your happiness, it seeps into your sense of self, your identity, and your emotional stability. You begin to define yourself by what you have and what you can attain. Your worth is bound up in your accomplishments, and when you fail to achieve them, you experience profound disappointment, or even despair. You may begin to see yourself as a failure, not because you are one, but because your value has been tied so tightly to external markers of success. This idea of self-worth being determined by external accomplishments leads to a distorted view of reality. You begin to measure your life through the lens of comparison, comparing your progress to others, your possessions to theirs, your success to theirs. This constant comparison feeds into the anxiety of never being good enough, never measuring up. As you watch others seemingly succeed effortlessly, the gap between where you are and where you want to be grows larger, deepening your feelings of inadequacy. In psychological terms, this is often referred to as social comparison theory, which argues that individuals derive their self-worth by comparing themselves to others. It's an insidious process, because the more you compare, the less satisfied you become with yourself. Instead of recognizing your intrinsic worth, you begin to see yourself only through the eyes of society and the false benchmarks it sets for success. In all of this, there is a hidden danger, the emotional toll of constantly trying to measure up. This emotional toll can manifest in many ways: burnout, anxiety, depression, and a pervasive feeling of being lost. You begin to feel like a hamster in a wheel, constantly running, constantly striving, but never actually getting anywhere. But this suffering is not just psychological, it is deeply existential. The more we chase external achievements, the more disconnected we become from our own essence, from the simple experience of being. As we pursue the fleeting, we lose touch with the eternal. The more we try to become, the more we forget how to just be. So here's the ultimate question. How do you break free from this? How do you escape this invisible cage that has been constructed over your entire life? How do you silence the incessant noise of striving long enough to hear the still, quiet voice of peace? We will answer that question in the next section. But first, take a moment to truly reflect on this truth. The more you pursue the external, the more you lose sight of the internal. What will you do with this realization? How do you break free? It may sound like a cruel twist of fate, but the first step in ending your suffering isn't fighting against life's pains, nor is it in chasing another goal or achievement. It's in denying the very force that drives the suffering in the first place, the relentless will to want, to strive, to become. Schopenhauer's philosophy offers us a path forward, but it's a radical one. He speaks of denial of the will, a refusal to continue the insatiable cycle of desire. It's not about quitting or resigning yourself to misery, but rather about redefining your relationship with desire itself. Let's unpack this idea, because it's a profound and life-altering shift in perspective. What Schopenhauer is advocating for is not a life of passivity or avoidance, but a life of conscious disengagement. In his view, the root of suffering isn't just the struggle for external things, it's the struggle itself. The constant fight against what is, the endless pushing against the tide, is the true source of pain. This radical notion invites us to step off the treadmill, to stop running after things that only create more desire. To refuse to be constantly hungry for something we think will make us happy, and instead to embrace the present moment as it is. It's about cultivating detachment, not from life, but from the attachment to outcomes. But detachment doesn't mean disengagement. It doesn't mean withdrawing into apathy. In fact, Schopenhauer suggests that it's through detachment that we can experience the deepest form of connection with life itself. When we free ourselves from the constant pull of the will, we begin to experience life not as a battle to win, but as a journey to experience fully. We don't need more things to be happy. We need to open ourselves to the experience of being alive, here, right now. This shift in perspective requires a form of rebellion against the societal narrative, rebellion against the deep psychological conditioning that tells you your value is tied to what you achieve. It's the rebellion to stop living for the future, stop living for others' approval, and to start living for yourself, exactly as you are. You may wonder, how does one begin such a rebellion? How can one let go of years of ingrained habits, desires, and expectations? The answer lies in small, deliberate steps. One of the most powerful tools for this shift is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of becoming acutely aware of the present moment without judgment. It's about cultivating an awareness of your thoughts and feelings without getting caught up in them. By doing this, you begin to unravel the compulsion to chase after the next thing. You start to understand that the present moment, just as it is enough. As you practice mindfulness, you learn to observe your desires without becoming enslaved by them. You start to see the difference between what you want and what you need. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to understand that your identity is not defined by what you have or what you strive for, but by your capacity to experience the world in its raw, unfiltered form. Another powerful tool in this rebellion is acceptance. Schopenhauer was clear: True peace comes from accepting that suffering is an intrinsic part of life. Instead of fighting it, we must learn to live with it. This doesn't mean embracing suffering for the sake of it, but rather accepting that it's part of the human experience. Only by coming to terms with suffering can we free ourselves from the constant desire to avoid it. Consider Viktor Frankl's insight from his time in the concentration camps, as shared in his book Man's Search for Meaning. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Frankl found meaning, not in the pursuit of pleasure or happiness, but in his ability to find purpose despite overwhelming suffering. In accepting life as it is, impermanent, unpredictable, and often painful, we discover a deeper freedom. The rebellion, then, isn't about eliminating all desire or rejecting all ambition. It's about recontextualizing desire. Instead of seeing it as a necessary force that drives us to achieve, we begin to see desire as a mere shadow of the will, something to be observed, acknowledged, but not followed blindly. As this perspective shifts, you'll begin to notice something incredible: freedom. True freedom doesn't come from conquering the world. It comes from conquering the mind, the very part of us that seeks to control, to possess, to consume. By detaching from the endless chase, we open ourselves to a life of deeper fulfillment, one not governed by constant yearning, but by peaceful acceptance of the present. But this isn't just an abstract idea. History is filled with examples of individuals who rebelled against the forces that bind them to the perpetual chase and discovered something far greater in the process. The lives of ascetics, spiritual teachers, and even intellectuals like Schopenhauer himself reveal that it is possible to live a rich, fulfilled life without ever needing to attain more. These individuals sought not to possess the world, but to experience it with clarity and depth. You may still be skeptical. After all, we've been raised to believe that success equals happiness, that the pursuit of pleasure is the only legitimate goal in life. But the question remains: what happens when that pursuit fails to satisfy? What happens when the hunger is never quenched? The rebellion is not about abandoning ambition altogether. It's about shifting from external validation to internal liberation. It's about breaking free from the chains of perpetual desire and finding fulfillment in the journey, not the destination. In the next section, we will explore the ultimate truth of how this rebellion leads to the most profound realization of all, the secret that truly ends suffering. But before we get there, take a moment to reflect on the radical shift you're being invited to make. What would it look like to stop chasing and simply be? What if I told you that the answer to ending suffering is not about escaping life's pain, nor is it about denying the harshness of existence? What if the secret to peace isn't to chase after happiness or success, but rather to embrace the very thing we've spent our lives avoiding? The ultimate truth that Schopenhauer reveals to us, and what countless philosophers, mystics, and even neuroscientists have touched upon, is this: true freedom comes from embracing the impermanence and pain of life itself. But let's pause for a moment. Before you close off this idea as too bleak or counterintuitive, hear me out. The reason why Schopenhauer's philosophy resonates so deeply with those who truly understand it is because it uncovers a truth that goes beyond the shallow promises of happiness and success. Life, as it is suffering. This is the most difficult, and yet the most liberating truth to accept. But it's not suffering in the way we think. We often think of suffering as something to avoid, something to escape, something to be eradicated. We chase pleasure, distraction, and the illusion of control, hoping that they will free us from the pain. But in doing so, we never find peace. Schopenhauer's insight is deeply rooted in a paradox that has plagued humanity for centuries. In order to end suffering, you must first stop fighting it. The true path to peace isn't found in the absence of suffering, but in the ability to accept it, to see it clearly without judgment. This is the power of Schopenhauer's denial of the will to live. It isn't about stopping life's flow or resigning to some dark nihilism. It's about freedom from the perpetual chase, freedom from the tyranny of desire, freedom from the need to constantly get somewhere. What Schopenhauer proposes is radical. You must stop living for the future. This doesn't mean giving up on your goals or abandoning all ambition. Rather, it's about liberating yourself from the belief that your happiness or fulfillment depends on what you will eventually attain. Happiness, Schopenhauer argues, is an illusion that is perpetually just beyond our reach. The more you chase it, the further it moves. So what's the key to this ultimate realization? It's the understanding that you as you are right now, with all of your flaws, imperfections, desires, and suffering, are complete. You don't need to become someone else or have something else to be worthy of peace. The very act of being, just existing, breathing, feeling, thinking, is enough. In that realization, you are already free. The irony of life is that we spend so much time seeking to change ourselves to achieve some idealized version of success that we forget to truly live in the moment. We are constantly focused on what is to come, what we need to achieve, how we need to be better. This constant future-focused mindset traps us in a never-ending loop of dissatisfaction. But once you accept the truth of life's impermanence and suffering, once you accept that it is not the absence of pain that will bring you peace, but the ability to live with it, and even find meaning in it, you unlock a deeper form of freedom. It's not the freedom from pain, but the freedom that comes from being at peace within pain. When you cease fighting, when you stop trying to outrun suffering, you open yourself to the beauty of life in its rawest form. Life becomes a flowing, ever-changing experience. One that you are no longer trying to control. You can then begin to live fully, experiencing the highs and lows without the need for them to validate you. Your worth is no longer tied to external achievements, but to your very ability to be present, to feel, to think, to love, and to simply exist. This realization isn't easy. It's not something you can simply decide to believe and have it immediately change your life. It's a shift that happens over time, through consistent practice of mindfulness, acceptance, and living in alignment with your true nature. But once you grasp this truth, everything begins to change. The world around you doesn't change. The suffering doesn't disappear, but your relationship to it does. You no longer need the world to bend to your desires in order for you to feel at peace. You no longer need to constantly chase the next thing, the next high, the next fix. Instead, you begin to live life in its fullness, experiencing every moment as it comes, free from the chains of constant wanting. This is the ultimate freedom, not from the world, but from the tyranny of your own mind. The desire to always want more is what traps you in a never-ending cycle. But once you release that desire, once you embrace the full spectrum of life with all its pain, beauty, and impermanence, you free yourself. You are no longer enslaved by the will to become. You are simply being. And that is where peace resides, not in the absence of suffering, but in the complete acceptance and understanding of life as it is. So the next time you face suffering, the next time you feel the weight of your desires, remember this: the very suffering you're trying to escape is the doorway to your liberation. It's not about running away. It's about standing still and letting life unfold as it will. You no longer need to strive. You simply need to be. And in that simplicity, you find your ultimate freedom.